This morning we hear this interesting passage from Luke's Gospel. We're continuing to study Luke during this year C, and there are lots of different ways that we can go with today's Gospel reading. There's kind of a lot there, but the line that stood out to me was today was, "Where your treasure is, there your heart may be also." And I think probably most of us have kind of heard. It's even a cliche at this point where you say where home is where the heart is, right? Home is where the heart is. And I think that's kind of the overarching message here is we're focusing, Jesus is focusing on the importance of a home. And I think there's a difference between home and dwelling place, like a house or an apartment, because I think those things are the structure. But the home is what we make it to be, right? Our home becomes what we want it to be, and our homes can show some personality, who we are, right? Those traits shine through in our homes. We kind of decorate. We get the kind of furniture that appeals to those of us who live in the home, right? We put the art on the wall that speaks to us, that kind of says who we are, who this family is, right? Those kinds of things. And my wife and I do this. We decorate our house the way that we like it. And as is often the case when more than one person is living in a space, we don't always agree on how things ought to be decorated. Sometimes she, for instance, likes to have artwork that says things like "home is where the heart is." And I prefer things like sports memorabilia. And so we do what any healthy couple does in these situations when we don't necessarily see eye to eye. We compromise, which means that we have most of our stuff on our walls says things like "home is where the heart is," and the sports memorabilia is in the garage. Right? So we compromise. We compromise. That's what any healthy couple, I think, ought to do, is compromise in those situations. But we're talking about this concept of home. And when I think of a home, I also think of this place. I think of St. John's as our home in a different way. Right? This is our spiritual home. We come to St. John's, all of us. We come here to be nourished spiritually, to be fed, to be fed by the Scriptures, to be fed by the sacrament. So we come here, and this is our spiritual home. Now we know that when we have our own homes, there's a lot that goes into making sure that those homes stay the way that we like them to be, that our personalities are represented. We want to make sure that they're clean. We want to make sure that they're in good repair. We want to make sure that they're decorated nicely and appropriately. All of those things take work. And those things take work here at St. John's as well. There's a lot that goes on to make sure that our spiritual home stays in as good a shape as it is. And I like to highlight our ministry teams. You know this about me, that I'm a proponent of making sure that you are aware of all of the efforts that the ministers of the church do to make this church function and to be the body of Christ. And you, of course, are the ministers. So one of the things I like to do from time to time is highlight those ministries and to highlight you for doing those ministries as a way of, first of all, saying thank you for doing them, and second of all, for making other people aware that those ministry teams exist, because maybe there's a ministry team there that you didn't realize existed, and maybe by highlighting that ministry team, then you say, well, those are, that I have gifts that are in that area. I want to explore that a little further. So I like to highlight ministries for those two different reasons at least, and plenty of other reasons as well. But at least those two different reasons, I like to highlight our ministry teams. Now, I mentioned decorating our homes. We like to do that. I like to have paintings and photographs on my wall. Well, we have a ministry team here at St. John's that helps us to do just that. If you notice, there's a section of our what we call our parish hall. I sometimes use the term narthex because our parish hall is attached to our sanctuary in the way that a narthex is in other buildings. So I sometimes use the word narthex. But our parish hall, if you notice, there's a large section of the wall that's decorated with artwork that rotates from time to time. That is done by a ministry team called Faith Through the Arts. And I met with some of the people who participate in Faith Through the Arts last week, and they helped me to explore with them some of what it is that they do to help our church to look nice. Right? This is a very well organized ministry team, much more organized than I am myself, I got to admit. They have a list of all of the displays that they plan to showcase over the next several months and even into next year. There are different displays. You may have noticed when you come in, the display changes from time to time, and those are all actually very planned in advance, right? So they're organized. They have different showcases that come through, and they also are flexible. So they're not just it has to be this way, right? They helped us out with our Vacation Bible School ministry that took place in July. You remember that in July, our Vacation Bible School theme was Christmas in July, and you probably noticed that during July we had a Christmas tree set up in the parish hall, along with a Santa Claus tapestry and a creche. So the Faith Through the Arts is who made that happen. Right? So Faith Through the Arts helps to keep our parish hall updated with different artwork. And now we all, this is something that's true for us as humans. We grow and we learn as we are exposed to art. Art helps us to grow as people. It helps us to become more cultured. Now, art is not something that I am good at. Right? I like to borrow the definition of art that I learned from my philosophy professor in college, and that definition that I use is, if I can do it, it's not art. So the artwork that you see is not mine, but by seeing that artwork, it helps me to grow as a person, and it helps all of us to grow as a person. So another thing that Faith Through the Arts does is it showcases artists who are far more talented than I am, and gives them a venue to display their artwork. So not only do we get to see it and experience it, but they also have an opportunity to allow us to purchase their pieces. If we like those pieces of art, we have the opportunity to purchase them and take them home. That helps support, first of all, the artist's lifestyle, way of living, right? That's a livelihood. That's all important. But it also a portion of the proceeds from that artwork actually comes back to St. John's and to fund that ministry. So it's a ministry team that really kind of funds itself, right? So when we have those opportunities to showcase that artwork, not only do we have a more decorated spiritual home, but we also have those opportunities to fund those ministries. And so Faith Through the Arts is a very important ministry team that I want to make sure everyone is aware of as part of our spiritual home. Now, we also know that in our homes there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance from time to time. We know that we live here in a very harsh environment. We live in the desert, and you can tell just by looking at our property from the street here that we have a whole lot of property to take care of. Right? So another component of taking care of this place, our spiritual home, is making sure that you're aware of all the maintenance that is required to make sure that the grounds remain beautiful. There are a lot of different components to that, by the way. There are our landscaping team of Bob and Dan, who do a lot of work to make sure that our landscaping is kept up. There's a lot of upkeep that's required here. Right in the desert, we have lots of dust. Right? We have the plants that grow here. Sometimes they tend to drop their branches, or they drop little tiny leaves everywhere, right? And those need to be cleaned up. So I want to make sure that you're aware that there are people who clean our space, who clean in here, who clean the pews and the carpets and the floors out in the parish hall. Right? Keep everything tidy. Keep everything operating as it's supposed to. Make sure that the lighting works. If a light bulb goes out, we have somebody to change the light bulbs. Right? So we have ministry teams that work with Dan and with Bob and that help to keep our grounds beautiful. We also have a garden ministry team that makes our garden out by Chilton Hall planted with flowers and plants and different. We had it with the nice rock garden there that we can go and we can sit and enjoy. Probably not this time of year, but later on when it's cooler, we can go and sit and enjoy the outdoor space. And all of that is because we have a team of people who are dedicated to making sure the grounds look tidy. We also have our land use task force, which is a group of people who put their thoughts into what we can do to make the property work for us. And one of the things that's true about church and across the board, any church, is that the space always wins. The space dictates what we get to do in worship. Right? And so our land use task force helps to make sure that our space can be used for the best possible outcome, right? And we can maximize the use of our space. And of course, that's an advisory body. The vestry and rector make the final decisions, but our land use task force puts in a lot of effort, including our junior warden, by the way, puts in a lot of effort to make sure that we're putting a lot of thought into how we use our property, just like we would do in our own homes. We want to make sure that everything is functioning properly, and we're keeping up on our maintenance, and we're keeping up on our preventative maintenance, because it keeps repair costs down for all of us in the future. Very important work that these ministry teams do. The last one I want to talk about is what we call our third place ministry, which is our coffee hour ministry. We call it third place because that's an old Starbucks term. Right? Your home, where you live, is your first place. Your office, where you work, is your second place. And Starbucks wants to be your third place that you go. So when you're not at home and you're not at work, you want to be in the third place where it's comfortable and it's pleasant. That's why we call it the third place ministry. Right? But we have our third place ministry team. And that third place ministry team makes sure that we all feel welcome when we get here. Because what's one of the first lessons you learned when you were a kid? Because one of the first lessons I learned was that as soon as somebody came in the door to visit, it was a pretty good idea to offer that person a drink. That's a kind thing to do. And so our third place ministry team does that. Our third place ministry team offers us a cup of coffee when we get here, because a guy like me has a hard time getting up in the morning, and when I've got to stand in front of you and preach, I need to have a few cups of coffee before I can be up here and preach in front of you, right? And so they provide us all with our coffee and with our goodies, and a lot of creativity, by the way. A lot of creativity. I don't know if you noticed, but when we celebrated the feast of St. John the Baptist, there were special goodies that were made that had honey and bees on them, and they kind of were reminiscent of what St. John the Baptist would have eaten, right? So we have a team of people who prepare all of these goodies for us and give us a place where we can enjoy our time with one another in our spiritual home. Now, another lesson that we learned probably when we were younger was that everyone has to do our part. Right? This is something that my wife still tries to teach me to this day, that I have to do my part in keeping up my home. Right? I have to do my part in cleaning. Right? We all have to do our part to keep up our home, and we all have to do our part to keep up our spiritual home. And so what I want us to continue to think about is to think about all of those ways that we can do that here at St. John's. We all have a way that we can contribute, because there are a lot of ministry teams that help to make our spiritual home great, not just the teams that I mentioned. There are lots of teams that we can be a part of, and we all have to do our part in different ways. So I want us to continue to think about that and to ask ourselves the question, what can I do to make sure that this spiritual home continues to be the wonderful place that it is? What role can I play to contribute to my spiritual home? Because we are all nourished here. We all come here for wonderful reasons. We all come here because we get to be together, we get to celebrate together, we get to be nourished by word and sacrament. Right? So we all have our part to play, and we get to ask ourselves that question: What can I do? What can I do to make sure that St. John's continues to function in the way that it does? And of course, we also acknowledge, as I said earlier, we acknowledge those of you who are participating on these and the other ministry teams, because it is because of you that St. John's can be the place that it is. It's important to raise that up and to acknowledge that and to say thank you. Thank you for making this a wonderful place. Let's continue to ask ourselves that question: how can I continue to to make St. John's the wonderful place that it is. Amen.